Now, our first keynote speaker of the day is Alex Gough, the CEO of the Professional Squash Association. Alex joined the PSA in 2008 after a 15-year career as a professional squash player, where he reached a high world ranking number 5. He has dedicated his life to the game that he loves. Alex will look back at the past 12 months and the plans put in place to restart professional squash in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, and also looking ahead to a bright future for the sport. Alex, the stage is yours.
That's great. Thanks, thanks, Kanzi, and and thanks, Zushan, for inviting me to speak at the summit. Fantastic. And also thanks once again for the support of the We Are One Fund. Very much appreciated. So yeah, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. I was going to do a quick introduction of myself, but you've already done that. I guess a quick little bit of background about myself. After finishing a mathematics degree in I've just realised, Zushan, are you okay to share the presentation? Yeah, thanks, mate. Just the first page, cool, awesome, thank you. So I guess going back a little bit, after finishing a mathematics degree in 1993, I decided to start on the path of becoming a professional squash player for what I thought would only be a couple of years. That turned into 15, and I carried on playing through to 2008, as Kanzi mentioned, reaching a high of world number 5. I was also on the PSA board of directors for a period of time from 2002 until 2008, and then after that, then transitioned into working for the PSA. Initially as a chief operating officer in June 2008, and then subsequently becoming the CEO in 2009. Long time ago now, feels like. And then with Lee Beachill coming into the COO role. At one point, when we moved the offices from Cardiff to Leeds, PSA had a staff of a grand total of 3. Myself, Lee Beachill, and Claudia Sherman. We are now a team of 30 plus. Okay, next slide, please, Zushan. So today I'd like to talk about how we've dealt with the last 12 months and the situation that sport has found themselves in due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then, as Kanzi mentioned, then move on to where PSA is now, our new strategic framework, and our recently announced partnership with InFront Sports and Media. So going back to March, as news started to emerge around the severity of the coronavirus, I don't think any of us could have foreseen what the impact would have been on the world. In early March, we managed to just about finish the Canary Wharf Classic and the Black Ball Open, and then everything obviously then came to a bit of an abrupt standstill. Little did we know then that there would be a 6-month hiatus from the World Tour. Initially, we only suspended the tour for 6 weeks through to the end of April, which felt right at the time, but we had no idea that this would keep rolling further and further back. International travel was suddenly a huge problem. Every country was going at a different rate. And so it quickly became clear that we weren't going to be playing anytime soon. We took the initial step was we had to freeze the rankings on March the 16th, 2020, and figure out the fairest way of putting things on hold and sort of constantly reassess how things would work going forward. Our initial conversations with events they were all based on kind of postponing and then trying to reschedule rather than cancelling them outright. This took up a huge amount of time and energy, and Hannah and the tour team were just in constant contact with all of the tournaments, trying to figure out how this was going to work going forward. But the amount of variables that kept appearing, it just proved a very, very difficult task. Then we had to kind of look sort of internally and where we were at. Obviously, the staff were a huge priority initially. Well, still are, but we had to make sure everyone was sort of taken care of. The advice with the UK government at the time was everything kind of needed to shut, so we shut the office, and everyone started working from home, which is still the current situation now. Hopefully, we'll start looking to start opening up, certainly in the UK in the next couple of months. But it's it's been a difficult time for everyone trying to get used to those sorts of used to that situation. I guess it's one we're all used to now. As with many UK companies, we needed to make use of the furlough scheme. This has certainly helped protect everyone's positions. I'm delighted to say that we've maintained all of the staff, and as we come out of the pandemic, we're hopefully in a strong position to move forward. Sorry, yeah, next. Sorry, Zushad, next slide, please. Cool. So then we had to look. Then we were looking at when things started to, well, not necessarily even open up, but we were trying to figure out a way back. You know, what would we do to bring the events back on? Our initial conversations were obviously with sponsors, and we focused our attention on Manchester as the first one. Obviously, with it being in the UK, we've got a great relationship with Manchester City Council, and we knew the venue well. Iaber Abbas was incredibly supporting in his willingness to give it a go. So this became our first realistic option. Budget-wise, there were some big changes to think about. Single rooms for all players and staff, COVID testing at various intervals before and during the event, hotel and transport logistics. I mean, the list goes on and on. All in all, not a cheap exercise either. So when it seemed more possible that these events in some shape or form were going to come back onto the calendar, the hard work began on what they might look like in terms of safety protocols. Keeping players and staff safe was always going to be a huge undertaking, and the list of unknowns was pretty endless. So Lee, the operations and tour teams, did an incredible job on these protocols, and in fact we were told later on that UK Sport were actually using parts of the plan that the team had put together to advise other sports on how to organise a safe return. One of the other things that we had to do was dealing with the various agencies in each country, sort of another complication that we had to kind of work through. Tim Garner and Andy Malley did a great job of liaising with the DCMS in the UK. We had to do similar things in Egypt, needing the permission from the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Not only that, but in all this, the last layer of all of that was dealing with public health in various places as well. None of these steps were guaranteed either. So I can't express enough the volume of work that went into this from the team. It really was a pretty incredible effort. Another unknown, obviously, as well was the players and how they would react to being in these very strict environments. But their understanding of the situation was amazing, and they were nothing short of incredible during the entire situation. Sorry, Suzanne, next slide, please. Thanks. Our lifesaver during this period was CIB in Egypt, and more importantly, their CEO, Hussein Abaza. Without his and the bank support, nothing would have been possible in Egypt. And to put on 3 major events in one country in 2020 seemed pretty impossible during the summer months. But their support enabled us to keep the World Tour on its feet through that period of time. Kareem Tawish did a fantastic job with the postponed World Tour finals in September, October. And then Amir Mansi put on a fantastic Egyptian Open at the Pyramids, also in October. It may have felt a little uncomfortable at the time with the amount of spectators there, but the players and staff were always kept safely away in the event bubble that was created at the venue and the hotel. So Lee and the team, again, the protocols that we put in place were incredibly robust. We also developed an even closer relationship with the Black Ball Club and Mohammed Raif and his board of directors. They were brilliant in their openness to collaborate with us on the back-to-back events in December, and now with the upcoming Platinum editions starting this week. We're also incredibly grateful to the Qatar Squash Federation, and in particular Tarek Zainal. The team there went above and beyond to host the Qatar Classic. The quarantine rules were very strict in the country at the time. Players needed to stay quarantined in the hotels for sort of 3 days after arrival. Still able to train during this period, but just very, very strict conditions. And they even went to the point of putting the drivers in the tournament hotel and therefore in the bubble in order to keep the players safe. Next slide, please, Dushan. So in terms of numbers, through the five World Tour events, the team kept 400 plus personnel safe, which included 288 players through those events. We did over 500 at-test events, with only one small blip of one official testing positive throughout that entire period of time. And for a sport the size of squash, it does feel that we pushed as hard as we possibly could to get the tour going. And when you compare when you see the timelines of where we were compared to other sports, I think we can be pretty proud of what the team and the players achieved through that period of time. 6 months off, and 2 of those months typically months that we don't compete in. So yeah, it was we pushed as hard as we could, and it feels like we did a decent job on that front. Next slide, please. So as we look ahead into the coming period, we look forward to the possibility. Obviously, we've got Blackpool starting on March 12th, Manchester Open in April, Laguna in May, hopefully Mauritius, then the British Open and the finals all through June, and then leading up to the World Championships in Chicago again, presented by the Walter family. We certainly hope that things will start to feel kind of more normal in the coming months. Next slide, please. So yeah, so back. Yeah, sorry, that's fine. I thought we missed one. So whilst the World Tour was obviously a really big focus in terms of maintaining interest for the fans and having tournaments for players to play, we were also working on the Challenger Tour and the satellite events. The major difference here, though, really was not being able to operate in a bubble environment, mainly due to the financial constraints and how expensive that is to do. So we had to go down the route of kind of country-only events and cross-border events. Some countries and players have benefited from this, and others are still waiting to get started, which is obviously a tough situation. We're very, really conscious of the fact that players at this level have been affected the most. So we're just about to start a pilot kind of grant scheme from this month, whereby we utilise some of PSA's funds to kickstart the international Challenger events. And if this works well, which hopefully it will, is something that will probably carry over into more kind of normal times to keep supporting the Challenger Tour and the players. So in other areas, whilst the tour and operations team are hard at work, liaising with tournaments and getting the tour back up and running, we all kind of took heart from the way the squash community came together through those darkest days. The reaction from the squash community, especially across kind of social media, was fantastic. Lockdown challenges to the way people turn their homes into squash courts was great to see. It showed just how important sport can be in keeping spirits up through these difficult times. Our teams as well, the PSA's media and SQUASHTV teams also did a great job, I think, of trying to keep people engaged and entertained, whilst there was no live squash for us to look forward to. The usual kind of content schedules were ripped up, and they kind of had to think outside the box to keep it all going. Things like the PSA Rewind was a core feature that we used. Pushing things out on Facebook's Premiere was a great way for us to repurpose kind of content, keep fans entertained, and yeah, so really good to sort of see all of those things kind of keep people engaged, really, while we were focusing on bringing the tour back. What else have we got? So yeah, having done all of that through that period of time, we've taken sort of PSA social media followers up to 750,000 plus now. 500,000 of those are on Facebook. We've had kind of 45, I think it was over 45 million minutes of content consumed by squash fans across our social media channels. SQUASHTV has obviously played a major role as well, having streamed all of the World Tour events through those kind of few months at the end of 2020. And more recently, we've teamed up with England Squash to broadcast their England Challenge and England Squash Championships. Again, just trying to get as much content as we could kind of out there. As mentioned earlier, the squash community has also been integral into the success of the Foundation's We Are One Fund, which we launched in the summer to support the professional players who were experiencing sort of financial and emotional difficulties due to the impact of the pandemic. The idea was initiated by some of the top players who supported it brilliantly. And a special mention goes out to Saurav Gosal, who was really instrumental in implementing it. And as mentioned, we've raised over $110,000 so far from everyone's generosity, which has gone to players who've been hit hardest by the pandemic. Outside of the court, away from the court, we've managed to sort of still renew partnerships with Dunlop and Salming, our sort of long-term partners that we've had, and the Foundation has also signed a new partnership with a charity, mental health charity, Sporting Chance, for support to our athletes. Next slide, please. I'm a little bit conscious of time now, Zushan. I should probably rattle through some of this. So alongside everything we were doing while we're trying to bring the tour back, was for us to sort of take a step back and look at what the sport might look like, or look at what a professional game might look like the other side of the pandemic. So with Tommy Burden, PSA's Chief Commercial Officer, who basically lives and breathes for things like strategic planning. We were in a good position sort of for Tommy, Lee and myself to draft up some initial ideas. We then brought in the help of three kind of close friends of squash, as we call them. Gordon Baird, who's the former managing director of Adidas and Dunlop. Mark Gorski from Sports Data Labs, who formerly of MBA and IMG. And John Barton from Team Marketing, who run the Champions League for UEFA since its inception. They were fantastic in giving us feedback and sort of helping us kind of mould the initial outline of everything. And then in close consultation with the board and sort of PSA's managers, we further kind of refined the framework as we went along. Then kind of tying it in with talks that had already begun with InFront, we appointed and started to work closely with the Deloitte Sports Group, kind of world renowned for their sort of consultancy work, one of the best in the business. This proved invaluable in sort of finalising the strategy, and we'll be kind of further sharing that with stakeholders in the coming weeks. Next slide, please, Sushan. So our vision is for squash to be a globally relevant sports entertainment product, and our mission hasn't changed much in the last kind of 5 or 10 years now, is to manage and promote a thriving and sustainable global professional squash circuit for both men and women, providing the best players in the world with an opportunity to maximise their career potential, whilst inspiring an ever-increasing fan base of players and followers worldwide. So what does that look like? Next slide, please. Thank you, Zishan. So we're basing it on six key pillars. The athletes, obviously the stars of the sport, essential to the success of professional squash. The events themselves, these are at the heart of everything that PSA does, the heart of the PSA sort of business, and enables players to make squash their livelihood. Fans, crucial, obviously very crucial to any sport, as they attend events, consume content, bring direct revenue into the sport. Obviously, this is key for brands to invest, having a big fan base. Media, showcases the sport, drives the fan experiences, grows the audience of the sport, generates the revenues that we all need that can then be reinvested back into the sport. Organisation. Any business needs a strong workforce, capital and income required to operate kind of operations and deliver on these strategies. And then lastly, partnerships, kind of working on developing a unified thinking and collaboration with everyone in squash, or all the stakeholders in squash. I feel that's going to be key to kind of recruiting new fans, new players, referees, coaches, media, bringing people into the sport. Next one, please, Zushan. So we've broken the six sort of pillars into 12 key objectives. I won't run through them all, but obviously one that remains consistent is that PSA is always aiming to increase the number of events that we have and the prize money within those events. And many of these other objectives are going to all need to come together to achieve this. One I will single out is we really feel that there's a need for modernising and rebranding the sport. This is something that we definitely need to do to kind of keep up with other sports, not to mention the ever-increasing popularity of things like esports. There's obviously a competitive landscape out there, and squash needs to kind of keep up. We've already moved forward on the objective number 9, which is setting up a more commercial arm within PSA. It's got the very glamorous name of Squash Media and Marketing. And has been formed and was pretty key in our discussions with InFront. All in all, it looks like we have got a lot to focus on in the coming years. We're very positive about what that outlook looks like. Next one, please, Zushan. So PSA and InFront. So one of our main aims in progressing the new strategy, and something that's always been a long-term ambition of PSA, was to partner with a leading sports marketing agency. And hopefully you'll have seen from a recent press release we've done just that. We've partnered up with them in what's an 8-year partnership, so a longer-term partnership, and it sees them becoming a minority investor in the media and marketing arm, as well as becoming our sales agency. We firmly believe this is going to be a game changer for us and for professional squash. It should accelerate the development of the sport, as well as allowing us to achieve a much more kind of commercially successful future. So InFront as I say, they are one of the leading sports marketing agencies. They've got a diverse and a very large portfolio of other sports organisations they work with, more notably FIFA, UEFA, BWF, and notably they work very closely with the IOC, which is obviously could prove to be invaluable to us. So while professional squash is obviously the primary focus of this collaboration, we hope the impact will be kind of keenly felt across all levels of the sport. PSA and InFront, we're hoping, the aim is to work together with World Squash as well, World Squash's regions and the member nations, to really kind of help grow the sport from the grassroots level up, all the way through to the professional game. So I think that's probably enough from me so far. Yeah, as I say, we are incredibly excited about the future with InFront, and truly believe that this partnership will sort of take the sport to the next level. Yeah, next slide, Zushan, please, if we can. I guess that's it from me, and yeah, any questions really, however that works.
Thank you so much, Alex. Yeah, so I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. So there's one from Patrick Cuba, and he's asking, is there any hope for squash to be included at the Olympics? Breakdancing pipped us.
They did indeed. I mean, we remain ever hopeful. We've been through the process far too many times now, and I think we've not got in for various different reasons along the way, and they've all been very different. And I think this last experience that we had through trying to get into Paris 2024 was probably more eye-opening than the rest, in that, if speaking candidly, it really didn't feel like there was much of a process. So whilst we felt like we'd worked pretty hard in the background with all the various people in Paris and whatnot, the breakdowns and decision came completely out of the blue, and none of us even had an inkling. Even people in France, and Jacques Fontaine, the WSF president at the time, was very close to Paris, literally didn't know about it until the day it was announced. So I think when we look forward to what potentially might be on the horizon for trying to get into LA 28, I think US squash are going to be very, very key in that, and their relationships. And overall, I think it's the approach is going to be to, especially now, I've mentioned InFront again, but now we have a relationship like that of just improving the sport and making the sport so good and so successful that the IOC basically can't ignore us anymore. So that's kind of the next step on that one, really.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. This was the time for your session, so I really appreciate it. I just wanted to ask you, are you going to be joining the lounge? Because then people can go there and ask you more questions there.
Sure, yeah, I can do for a bit.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
so for everyone, because I see we have a lot of questions on the right, so for all of you guys, if you want to go and have a quick chat with Alex, just feel free to go meet him at the tables in the lounge.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers,
we really appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries.